Hi, my name is Ron Layman. I'm from the Faux School in Frederick, Maryland. And today I'm going to show you a finish that we call Fantasy Granite in the Dark Variation. And this finish is great for columns, walls. You can use it on floors. You can use it on countertops. If you're going to do floors and countertops, your surface preparation is a little bit different, obviously, than walls. If you're going to use it on floors, you want to use a really high-grade primer, depending on the type of the floor. If you're going to do concrete, tile, or even wood, just go out and get a primer called XIM, and they're shellac-based, or the, what is it called, Bullseye. Bullseye? Zinsser Bullseye. It's a shellac base. That's going to be a tighter, harder finish, better for floors and countertops. If you're going to use it on a floor and a countertop, you want to use at least 4 to 5 coats of a good, high-grade, floor-grade finish, like a water-based floor-grade polyurethane, or the 2-part bar top coatings if you're going to do a countertop. That looks really cool. That being said, if you put it on a countertop, that doesn't mean you have the durability and luxury of the granite, where you can take a hot pot right off the stove and place it on a countertop. That won't work with this. This is a painted finish. So those hot pots, when you put it on the surface, are going to get hot, sticky, and it's going to get a hot lift. It's going to take it right off the surface, no matter what your clear coat is. Unless your clear coat is specifically designed to stand up to those kind of temperatures, then you're okay. But average stuff you're going to find at most home improvement stores won't work. So the tools we're going to need today are very simple. We need a natural wool sea sponge, We want a really good one, kind that has no texture, no print, no pattern. That makes it easier for us to create this finish. We're going to be using the water-based glaze. Today I'm using our classic wall glaze here at the school. And I've tinted it 3 colors. The first color is simply black. The second color is the Mikado brown. The third color is our ruby red. I'm going to sponge all 3 colors onto the surface, and then I'm going to come back with a product that we call Granite Flakes. And we're going to just blow those in. So, let's get our tools, let's get started. Okay, so step 1 is I've base coated the surface using the eggshell based primer or satin primer. I've rolled it on, the color is called Candlestick, and I used a 3/8 inch nap roller. Again, 3/8 inch small nap is what we're looking for. We don't want anything with a lot of texture, we don't want a big fluffy roller. So it's dried, it's nice and has a nice sheen to it. And again, this is a glazing technique, so no flat paints, no semi-gloss. Flat's too porous, sucks the paint in, holds it, we don't get time to move. Semi-gloss is too smooth and won't hold the texture or our effect. Everything's going to slip and slide all over the place. Okay, so the first step, I'm going to take my natural sea wool sponge, and I'm going to get into my pre-tinted black glaze. I'm just going to load it up a little bit. I don't want to overdo it. Now, I know what you're thinking, 80 sponge painting technique, not quite. The biggest thing about this is what you don't want to do is smash the sponge onto the surface. You don't want to jam it on there. It's hard to see a little bit over here. What we're going to do is kind of just hit it and slowly take our time building it up. We're creating our background for the fantasy granite. All right. Now what trick is, don't slide it, so you want to come straight in. Don't hit it and slip, or else you're going to have a mess. And with this, less is more. Slowly take your time building it up. Now I did pre-dampen the sponge. I put it into some nice clean water, wrung it out. You want to make sure you don't have any water in the sponge. So what will happen if you have too much water trapped in the sponge, and when you hit the surface, you'll know, because it's going to start dripping down. We don't want that. So if you don't quite have some of the hand strength that you need to think you gotta, or to wring out the sponge properly, wrap the sponge in a clean, lint-free terry cloth towel. See, there's a drip right there. I didn't get it all out. Wrap it in that terry cloth towel, and that'll help pull it out. It's not a big deal if you get a few here and there. You just don't want to get too crazy with it. And you'll notice as I tap the surface, I'm going all over the place. I'm not going da-da-da-da-da, straight across or up and down. Don't want to create distinct patterns. And as I hit the surface, I'm also changing the angle. I'm going to highly exaggerate it. Hit this way, that way. So every so often I'm just turning it. I'm working into the corners. I know it's a sample board. What are you going to do if you're doing a wall, the corner of a wall? You're going to take a sponge, put a ruler on it, and take your straight edge and cut it so you have a corner sponge. If that's the case and you're working a corner, you'll work your corner first, a little bit of the corner, a little bit of the corner, and then work the field to blend it all in. You work your corners first, that way if you have any distinct lines, when you're working the field, you break it up. Okay, so now I'm rinsing out the sponge in some clean water. Get it all out of there. I'm going to work this glaze wet into wet. I'm getting some of my pre-tinted brown, the Mikado brown glaze. And I'm going to go right over top of it. I don't want to overblend it or overwork it. Meaning overblending, I don't want to smash it all together and create one color. I want to be able to see some separation. I want to see my black poking through. I want to see the brown in there. I'm just going to get a little bit more. It's okay if we see some of that base color coming out. The great thing about this is you can change your colors. You're not stuck with this palette of colors that I'm going to use. You can do pinks, purples, blues, greens, anything you can imagine. I know, where could you use this technique? Looks great on columns. Walls are fun. Can I use it on a countertop? Yes, you can. The biggest thing about using this on a countertop is you're going to have to properly prime the countertop, and that's going to depend on what your countertop is currently made of. If you have a Formica or laminate type countertop, clean it really well using, I just use any kind of good cleaner. Alcohol works great, like denatured alcohol or rubbing alcohol even, or acetone. Let it dry. If it's laminate, I would prefer to use a primer by the company called XIM, and they have a shellac-based primer, very strong, very durable. You're going to roll 2 coats in there, leave it set, then you'll do your base coat, and then your faux finish. And then you would top this faux finish with probably at least, if you use a water-based polyurethane from a brand like Minwax, at least 4 coats, because it's water-based polyurethanes are very thin, and you need to put a lot of coats on. You could even use that 2-part bar top coating. That looks really cool. Okay, my brown's finished. Back into some water, rinse out the brown. And now we're going to get into the rust. Same thing, same sponge, still working wet into wet. I'm just using a little plate to load it onto. Not a big deal. There's my red. It's more of a rust color. It's actually called ruby. And what I'm going to do now is kind of create some drifting, some heavier areas, some lighter areas. Again, less is more. If you put too much on this sponge and come into the surface, you're going to have issues. You're going to get big blotches of color. It's going to be hard to break them up and blend them in nicely. Now, the colors that I'm using, trying to think, I probably did about, what, 55–60% coverage with the black. About 65% of the brown. And probably back to about 50% of the red. There we go. Now, it's a lot of red. No big deal. And that's usually how it works. What I'm doing is I'm rinsing my sponge out one more time. Get it all dried out. This is a big sponge. I'm going to get a little bit more black out. There we go. And just kind of come back and use my black to push everything down, meaning pushing the red back, the brown back. But I don't want my black to be so distinct it's overpowering. I just want hints of it. Can use the black to create some fun drifting. Okay. Now we're done finished with the sponge. We're finished with our colors. Put the sponge back in some water. I'm going to take and dry off my hands. because they're damp. But look at that, after all that, look how clean I am. Okay, gotta get them good and dry. Now the next step, this is the fun part. These little guys are what we call granite flakes. I'm going to take them and place them in my hand like so, come into the surface, and with a light blow, motion, just a light puff, light blowing. No, if you blow like that, you're going to get a big clump of this stuff right in the middle, and once it's on here, you're committed, it's not coming off. It's messy. It's going to go everywhere, this stuff's light. There we go. That's it. Look at it. It's all over the place. It's fun though. Okay. Now the next step. You just kind of blow over the surface because there's no special tool that they make that helps you go in there to dust off the excess. The biggest thing, you don't want to overdo it, because if you overdo it, meaning too much of the granite flakes into the finish, then what's going to happen is, as it dries, the granite flakes that are the flakes that aren't in contact with the surface, they're going to flake off and just continue to drop off. Now, I'm going to let this dry, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to put 3 to 4 coats of polyurethane over the surface, and what that's going to do is going to protect it. Well, first thing it's going to do is, any of these flakes that are a little loose, it's going to kind of go in there and seep around the flakes. Go in there and make sure that they're 100% in contact with the surface. Then the second coat's going to go in, add a little bit more protection. Third coat's going to have even more protection. And depending on how it looks, it's a kind of a preference, but I always go 4 coats if I'm using a water base. And if I was doing this on a wall or a ceiling, like in my house, I have a dome ceiling, and I have this finish in a lighter variation, more like a, I guess you would call it, it's like a limestone, a real soft-looking limestone. And it looks cool because up on that dome ceiling, the light hits all these little flakes, and it just dances across the surface. So we're going to let this dry. We'll come back and show you what it looks like. Well, there you have it. There's our fantasy granite in a dark variation using the water-based materials. Now all it's set to do is let this dry overnight and apply 4 to 5 coats of the polyurethane over it. If I'm using the water-based polyurethane, again, I'm going to use a very fine roller nap. Probably 3/8 easily. I think earlier, yeah, 3/8 is what I'll use on this, because I don't want to see any air bubbles, I don't want to see any fish eyes, I don't want to see any texture in the poly. That's pretty much it. There you go. My name is Ron Layman. I want to thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a message below, send an email, call the studio. I will answer them as quickly as I can, and I will also make sure that there's a full description with links to all the products and materials, the tools used today. Make sure you visit our website at thefauxschool.com. Thanks for watching.